What's up guys, it's Will back again, and today's review is Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. Me and Earl and the Dying Girl is a 2015 dramedy film that was directed by Alfonso Gomez-Rejon and is based on the novel of the same name written by Jesse Andrews. I should also mention that this film was first requested to me by Devon G, Deskovic back on my History of Violence review that I released back on the 12th of February. Okay, so Me and Earl and the Dying Girl takes place in modern day and primarily follows Greg, an awkward high school senior who spends the majority of his time making silly movies with his friend Earl and simply attempting to survive the high school experience. But one day, Greg learns that his childhood friend Rachel has been diagnosed with leukemia, and Greg's mom forces him to spend time with Rachel during the most difficult time in her life. As Rachel's condition worsens, Greg and Earl agree to make a film for Rachel that will hopefully bring her some comfort and just generally bring her some happiness. And the rest of the film is spent watching Greg and Earl make their film for Rachel, while we also watch Greg and Rachel form a unique bond with one another in a very difficult time. Okay, so when I first saw this request coming up on the list, I was kind of excited because I remember seeing the trailer for the film back sometime in 2015, and I was definitely intrigued by it. I remember wanting to see it, and then I don't remember ever hearing anything else about it until I received the request. It seemed to fly under a lot of people's radar, including my own. But I gotta tell you guys, man, this movie really hit me hard square in the feels. As the film progresses and I became more and more invested in these characters and their unusually difficult coming of age journey, I took it really hard when they faced some of the most difficult obstacles that a kid that age could possibly face. When you think about it, this is a very simple story with a very simple premise and really just a slight deviation from the standard coming of age narrative. When you throw leukemia into the mix and then combine that with the normal teenage issues like finding your identity, making friends, and fitting in, trying to figure out what you're going to do with your life when you graduate, and so forth, you have something that's familiar yet different at the same time. And part of what makes this film so emotionally impactful is the relationships the characters build with one another along the way, but the other part stems from the fact that they take that sky is falling mentality that the characters often feel in coming of age films and actually make it a reality in this movie. So in other words, typically coming of age films have teenagers deal with issues that have to do with the aspects I previously mentioned, like finding your identity, fitting in, and so forth, and then those characters act like it's the end of the world because to them it is. It's a sky is falling mentality that the film plays up to sort of gradually build up to the character's breaking point. But in Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, the sky actually is falling for at least one of these characters. Rachel's condition worsens as the film progresses, and because of this, the stakes are raised all the higher because the three main characters are all dealing with a problem that simply cannot be easily overcome. This is bigger than the normal conflict you see in a lot of coming of age films, and because of that, the emotional impact is huge. As the title would certainly lead you to believe, the primary focus of this film is Greg. He's the main character, so you're seeing things from his perspective more often than not. The interesting thing about that is he's probably the least interesting character of the big three. He's not terrible, he is well acted, but this film succeeds as a joint effort. The acting is good, but the relationships are better. The interactions between the characters and the overall dynamic is what makes this film so effective when the conflict reaches its boiling point. I also got to give credit to director Alfonso Gomez-Rejon for delivering a visual experience that is very unique and one that ultimately separates itself from other coming of age films. There's a lot of really interesting shots that either slowly rotate towards a person or object of interest, or just implementing something that's totally outside the norm that will definitely rouse your curiosity. There are a lot of those kind of shots in this film that add a lot of personality to the film, and for this kind of indie flick, that's an important factor. It also wouldn't be a quality dramedy without some quality humor. There's definitely some really nice humor in this film that isn't like knock your socks off hilarious or anything, but it's silly, it's quirky, and it's fun. It'll have you chuckling every now and then and provide some lightheartedness to a story that can occasionally get pretty dark. But I want to just briefly head back to the characters and the acting real quick. I want to give these three big actors their due because they all are actually really good in this movie. So Thomas Mann plays Greg, Olivia Cooke plays Rachel, who is my personal favorite, and Cyler, who you may know from Power Rangers, plays Earl. I think Thomas Mann is solid in his role, but Olivia Cooke and Cyler were both outstanding in theirs. Olivia Cooke was so great because she showed the greatest range of any of the big three. She goes through a physical and emotional transformation as Rachel that will likely affect you in a lot of ways. She 100% looks and feels the part, and it'll help you invest that much further in her character. Cyler, on the other hand, plays a little bit more of a caricature. Earl is such an individual that he almost doesn't feel like a person you'd ever meet in real real life. He's good because he brings a lot of comic relief to the story, and because he's just such a memorable character. He's fun. It's also worth noting that Nick Offerman and Jon Bernthal are both in this movie. They're great as usual, by the way, especially Jon Bernthal, who deserves way more shine for his continuously great work. But as we recap, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl is a great film that will likely impact you in a lot of different ways. It's simple, but it has a lot to say nonetheless. I thought it had some awesome characters and acting, a beautiful story about friendship and perspective, some really unique cinematography, and a nice balance of drama and humor. The only knock I have on this film is that the main character Greg occasionally underwhelms. Regardless, I'm going to give Me and Earl and the Dying Girl a 9.5 out of 10, and definitely recommend you check this one out if you're into indie films and you're looking for a clever dramedy with a great message. Be ready for the feels. So have you guys seen Me and Earl and the Dying Girl? What did you think of it? And if not, let me know why not. And also let me know your favorite indie dramedy film like this to date. Broad question, but it should be a fun conversation. That's all for now though. This is WillFoxification signing off. See you in the next review.